Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. Today we have a great guest. In the next 5 to 8 years, we could see maybe 60% or more of businesses that will be sold or transferred to family members for one reason or the other. So getting a valuation is very important. So today I have invited Bharat Kanodia to come on. He is an ASA designated appraiser. He's actually on the board and has been appraising businesses for the last 20 years. So welcome first off, Bharat. How's your day going?
Hi, Roy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Glad to have you here. This is an important subject, and I think it's not only the fact that this transfer is going to happen, but it's not something that you decide on Friday, I want to sell my business. You make a call on Monday and you get the highest value. So this is a process that can take, I'll let you weigh in on this, but I'm thinking it can take 2 to 3 years in some cases to get things cleaned up, optimize it where we can get the highest value for our business.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to do it right, if you want to maximize your value, then consider it almost like a exercise, like preparing to go to college, right? You don't wake up one day your senior year, halfway through the year, that hey, I want to go to Princeton.
Right.
No, you decide 2, 3 years up front and start working towards that goal.
Right. Yeah, and I assume if you try to do something in the short term, try to rush it through, you could probably take a 25 to 30% discount from where you would really like to be at the price of that business. Is that pretty close?
At least, if you're lucky, that is also if you're lucky enough if your business sells, because only 1 out of 5 businesses that are listed for sale sell.
Oh,
And even
wow.
the ones that do sell, they sell about 20 to 30% below listing price.
Wow. All right. So that's a good point. Let's get out ahead of this, and let's just say that I'm thinking about selling mine. I'm probably 2 3 years out from there. So I come to you. So what is going to be some of the first steps that we're going to go through to not only try to set a target price, but also, kind of clean up my income statement, balance sheet, do that work to really show what that value is.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, think of it this way, that say, for example, um, if you're going on a date, right? You don't just show up on a date in your work clothes with a dirty car. You go home, you take a shower, you put on a fresh pair of clothes, you get your car clean, make sure you got enough fuel, make sure you got enough cash, and then you show up on your date. And that is also maybe you brush your teeth a couple of times before that.
Right. So what are going to be some of those first things that we're going to want to look, or, I guess, what are some of the first steps that you would take to a new business or somebody that comes to you wanting to think about putting their business on the market in a few years?
Yeah. So a first thing, and if any seller understands this one thing, and if sellers or business owners can get one thing out of this conversation, Roy, is think of everything about your business from a buyer's perspective. If you can just do that one thing, you are miles ahead of any business owner who wants to sell the business. Now, why would a buyer want to buy a business? Buyers want to buy businesses only for 2 reasons. Only 2 reasons. One is they want to enjoy a consistent cash flow. Number one. Number two is they don't want to do anything to receive that consistent cash flow. That's it. 2 things. They want the consistent cash flow and they don't want to do anything. They want to sit on their butt and enjoy that cash flow. So the closer and the closer you bring your business to those 2 factors, the higher your value and the quicker your business will sell. Now, how do you get your business closest to those two things and attract buyers. So consistent cash flow, as in you have to ensure customer loyalty. You have to ensure your books are clean. You have to ensure your systems are automated. Sitting on your butt and enjoying it, you have to ensure that you have proper operation softwares in place, or proper contracts in place, or proper management in place.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit the other day. We had a conversation, and I think you bring up a good point that a lot of people, or most people that are looking to invest, especially in the higher range businesses, they're not looking for a job. They don't want to come in and work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now, you do have those turnaround guys that they do want to do that, but then that's when we start talking about that steep discount to uh, what you're actually going to get for your business. The more work that they have to come in and do, the less you can expect to gain from it.
Precisely, and it's sort of counterintuitive if you think about it, right? So if a current owner can enjoy that consistent cash flow and can sit on their butt and enjoy that cash flow, they would say, hey, I'm good, I don't want to sell. Right? Because they now are starting to think like a buyer. But if they really do want to sell, they really do want to enjoy their retirement and not run the business into the ground, they might want to sell their business when times are good, when the
Right.
profits are coming in, when the customers are happy with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know there's extenuating circumstances such as health, maybe wanting to move out of the country to retire. There's a lot of things, but we can kind of break it down to the simplest of when people sell cars, when they sell other things, typically there's something wrong with it or they wouldn't want to get out from under it. And so, as buying a business, you're going to look at that the same way, is that if it's providing awesome cash flow to this guy, things are running really good. So why do you want to get rid of that? It's always a clue when I see something for sale. It's like, why are they trying to get rid of it if it's so good?
Precisely. And that's always a first question any buyer might ask. And that's a legitimate question. You try to sell your house, you try to sell your car, a buyer will always ask, why are you selling it?
Right, right. Yeah, and the other thing about this too, assuming the higher the price of the business, the more due diligence that buyer is going to do. This isn't going to be like making a car transaction where we walk around it 3 times, kick all the tires, make sure it turns over, and we've got a purchase. There's going to be a lot of, like you said, looking through the financials. They're probably going to want to come in and even see how this thing operates on a day-to-day basis, meet the staff, the key people. It's a how long would you say is that due diligence period, from the time somebody may be interested to when they can actually make a decision that they want to move forward with this?
I have seen transactions move very fast, as in, when after the buyer and seller meet, the
Right.
transaction has consummated within a month.
Okay. Wow.
Or I've also seen transactions last 12 to 24 months. And that is on part of the both the buyer and the seller. Sometimes even the buyers are not ready. So, it's very easy for us to sit here and blame the seller for everything.
Right.
But
Right.
even sometimes, you have buyers who are not ready to pull the trigger and they're just around to kicking the tires.
Yeah. Yeah. I assume that if there's no real estate involved, if we have mainly a service business, we look at a discounted cash flow or a cap rate model where the more assets we have, then it becomes a little bit more complicated trying to evaluate real estate, vehicles, inventory. So again, that can just take it. It's not that that's good or bad. It's just it is what it is, and so it can be a little more time consuming. And then the other thing is depend on, I guess, how the buyer is going to finance this transaction. If it's a cash transaction that's a little smoother versus if you're going to have a lender or some other outside funding source, then I guess that can actually not complicate, but there's just a lot more due diligence because they're going to want to do their due diligence as well as the buyer.
Yeah, that's a great question, Roy. If a buyer is paying cash, then the only decision maker is the buyer and the buyer's family or the buyer's business colleagues. But if the buyer is looking for a bank loan or an SBA loan, they have to go through another set of hoops.
Right.
And the banks or the SBA, they have their own set of criteria for when they allow financing or when they don't. So,
Right.
needless to say, smart sellers or smart business owners should assume that a potential buyer will be seeking a bank loan or an SBA loan. So if they keep that assumption in mind and start working towards it, they will be far ahead of the competition and closer to selling their business.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of those loans have to go through committees. It's not even your banker that gets to make the yes or no. A lot of times they have committees that they have to submit it to as well. So let's talk about something that gets kind of delicate. It is maybe there's a solopreneur or a smaller business owner operating under their name. The business revolves around them. And I've seen this play out in real life. Is why I want to bring it up because it's important that as a seller, there has to be a business for you to sell. It has to be an ongoing concern. Um, just like myself, if all of my business is wrapped up in my name, people want to talk to me. I'm the one that deals with everybody. While I could sell my book of business at the end of the day, if there's not that trust factor with that buyer, there's really going to be very little value there for somebody to purchase. So I know that sounds confusing, but I just really want to talk about kind of positioning ourselves, the smaller company guys, to really have something to sell at the end of the day.
Yeah, great point, Roy. So, say for example, if you own a auto repair shop, right? Roy's Auto Repair Shop. Um, think about, why do customers come to you? Are the customers coming to you because they know Roy? Are the customers coming to you because they are Roy's neighbor? Or did they grow up with Roy? Or are the customers coming to you because Roy's Auto Repair Shop does a good job? Or Roy's Auto Repair Shop has a good reputation, not Roy, Roy's Auto Repair Shop. There are two different distinctions between the business and the person.
Right.
Um, they don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, but they should not be 100% overlapping.
Right. Yeah, and it like myself in the service business, it becomes even more critical because I deal with everybody. I deal with all my customers face to face, and I've seen these family entities that they've kind of blown up at the end of the day, where the patriarch was in charge, did all the work. People talked to him. They didn't even know that there were other people in this company, and so there's not that trust factor that that employee A is going to be able to step up and run the business going on. And so uh, at that point, I've seen that just the value evaporates and there's nothing there, and that's there's nothing worse because everybody wants to have that income to retire on. When you get to be a certain age, you want to be able to sell the business, step back, and again, we kind of, it's not really the scope of this podcast, but some of that gets back to the business strategy as well, as you kind of have to position the business to carry on with or without you. It can't be totally dependent on you to show up every
Yeah, I mean, let's think of it this way, right? So um, there's $1 million business, right? This is $1 million business, and this is $1 million real estate, right? Why is it easier to sell $1 million real estate versus $1 million business? Because once you sell the real estate, it is very unlikely that the value will drop. Real estate usually retains its value. Why does it retain its value? It retains its value because there are comparables that have similar valuations. Um, the problem with business is it's a moving target, right? A business can go from $1 million to $200,000 in 6 months if it's not
Right.
taken care of well. Whereas a house, even if you abandon the house for 6 months, $1 million house, even if you have, water damage, what have you, it will only decline by 50,000 or 100,000. So that's why real estate generally retains its value and the business needs to be taken care of on a day-to-day basis. Now, on the plus side, in 6 months, real estate might only go up by 5 or 10%, but a business can go up by 500% in 6 months if you play your
Right.
cards right.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So what would be some tips? Is there like a top 5 list of things that you would talk to, want to advise people to kind of on the sell side to be thinking about if, in the next year or two, you're thinking about selling? Is there what should they be looking at or thinking about?
Great question. So, number one reason why businesses do not sell is unrealistic expectations of sellers. Unrealistic expectations in terms of value, in terms of time to execute the deal, in terms of terms of the deal. So most people think that, hey, if they have a business worth $1 million, somebody's going to come out and cut them a check of $1 million, and they can walk away into the sunset, and some guy is, now running the business. Well, it doesn't work like that. It works like that in real estate, again, because in real estate, the value does not decline as easily. Whereas in a business, the value could decline. So very rarely does somebody cut you a check for 100% of the value. Most times you will have some kind of a earnout or some kind of a seller financing built into the value. So number one thing a seller could do is really understand what their business is, and to do that you need to have clean books. You have to recognize all the revenue, all the expenses. If a operator's salary is 100,000 to operate that business, and the seller is paying himself 200,000, well, they need to adjust that salary because you have to think about everything from a market participant's perspective. Um, you have to. Uh, 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 so one of the easier ways of valuing a business is, say, for example, if you go to a real estate agent and say, Jimmy, I want to buy a house. All right. What's the first question Jimmy's going to say? Jimmy's going to ask you, all right, Roy, how much payment can you afford a month? Jimmy's not going to ask you that, Roy, do you want to buy a $500,000 house or a $600,000 house?
Right.
Jimmy's
Right.
going to say, how much payment can you afford a month? And
Right.
based on that payment, he's going to back into the value of the house.
Right.
Similarly, you think of your business as a house and say that, okay, how much cash flow will this business give to a new buyer on a monthly basis? Is it 2,000? Is it 5,000? And based on that cash flow, you can back into the value of the house, just like a mortgage.
Right. Yeah, when we talk about expenses, and I'm not talking about anything that's illegal, but sometimes smaller businesses, they carry family members, cars. They have these expenses that that I as the buyer, I'm not going to continue those on, but if they don't, I guess if they don't get that cleaned up immediately, then it lessens that cash flow, which lessens the value. So those are important things to think about as well. And there may be others, though. That's just the big ones that come to mind there.
Yeah. I mean, there are many things because let's face it, the books in small business, they're designed to manage taxes. So to minimize taxes, most business owners will try to load up on all the expenses, their car, their gym membership, their vacations, their cell phones, they pile on as much as they can,
Right.
which is okay, right? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
illegal, right?
Right.
But that is not looking at things from a buyer's perspective. A buyer will come in and say that, oh, wait, you got all these expenses. You practically have no profit in this business. So
Right.
most smart buyers and appraisers like myself, we will adjust your cash flow to account for all these excessive expenses that most um, owners put into the business.
So what about keeping, and I know this, it's a wide ranging question because we may be service, we may be a product. There's a lot of, we may be smaller, bigger, but what about keeping the owner on as a consultant? A lot of times what I see is, they'll buy a business, but they'll have like a 1 year contract for the owner to stay on to help. Recommendable, non-recommendable, each situation has its own merits. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, most buyers will ask for two things. One, they will ask for a consulting agreement or some kind of a employment agreement for at least 1 to 2 years. And that's pretty standard because again, they don't want the $1 million business to become a $200,000 business in 6 months. So they
Right.
want to make sure there's continuity.
Right.
Um, and second thing they will ask for is a non-compete.
Yes.
What they don't want is the seller, taking that $1 million check, walking across the street, and opening up another auto repair shop and start competing against, the new Roy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And how enforceable is, you hear all sorts of things. Are the non-competes I know they're fairly standard now, but are they fairly enforceable as well? What are your chances that somebody tries to go out and get around that?
People do all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
And, you can't stop people from doing crazy things.
Right.
What you can do is you can have an ironclad agreement. And, so say and that's part of the reason why most buyers have clauses like earnouts or seller financing. So say if somebody sells their business and it's seller financed, right? So the buyer is paying the monthly payments after they sell it, and if the same seller goes across the street and opens up a competing shop, well, he is shooting himself in the foot because he's still expecting cash payments from the old business.
Right.
And that's why many a times you have these strings attached to keep honest people honest.
Yeah. Yeah. It never hurts to keep the seller with some skin in the game just to make sure that everything goes off exactly like they said it would.
Yes.
So let's look at the other side. So as what are some tips that you would give to a buyer who walk in or, working with somebody else to make sure that they get the best value for themselves?
Great question. As a buyer, the first thing I would do is understand um, how um, loyal the customer base is. Um, are you getting repeat customers? Are they getting referrals from customers? Does the business have good online reviews? Are the employees loyal? Have the employees been around a while? Are the employees happy? Because the simple rule is your employees are going to treat your customers the way you treat them. So if an employee is feeling good about their jobs and the company they're in, they're going to treat the customers right. And a customer that's being treated right is going to come back. Um, Business, Roy, is frankly very simple. It's just people make it complicated, right? I mean, if you do the right thing and you are not looking for short-term Wall Street type gains, and you are looking out for your customer, and of course, making a small profit for yourself in the meantime, um, your business will grow. It's got nowhere to go but grow.
Yeah, right. And the other thing, I'm not advocating for any one professional versus another, but I think that especially once we start getting into the higher price businesses, that it's always recommendable to surround yourself with a team of professionals because as buyers, we can become emotionally involved in something and maybe want something a little bit too much to look past those red flags that if we have a good team of advisors around us, they can help stick to the business fundamentals as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if you are considering selling your business in a few years, um, start having preliminary discussions with your CPA. Start talking to them that, hey, what would I need to do to clean my books, to position the business for a sale in the next 2 to 3 years? And most CPAs are smart enough to help you. If you don't have that kind of a open relationship with your CPA, call a local business broker, and ask somebody to come in and look under the hood. And that doesn't cost anything, right? A local business owner would come in and they would tell you that, okay, this business, this is the good, the bad, the ugly. And then start working towards that. And I would ask you do this exercise every 6 to 12 months before when you start thinking about selling your business, because these are the professionals who can help you get there, and the professionals who help you the most in your preparation process are the ones you want to work with during the transaction.
And we always need an A1 appraiser to come out and lay some second eyes on the business operation to make sure that everything is like they say that it is as well.
I mean, the first thing, if you hire a business broker or if you're trying to sell, first thing you want to know is, hey, what is my business worth?
Right.
So that's where you need professionals like me to come in and help you understand what your business is worth and what is the most valuable component of your business, and what are the tweaks you can make to maximize the value of your business. I can look at the business from a buyer's perspective or from a lender's perspective and tell you that, hey, these are 2 or 3 things they will be paying attention to. So if you just start working on these 2, 3 factors, you can maximize your value.
So the other tricky component is real estate. If you have real estate attached to a business, a lot of times people want to buy the business. I'll hang on to the real estate and charge you rent, but we really have to think that through. I mean, it makes it easier for the buyer to probably get to reduce the price depending upon the real estate, but if we're expecting them to pay the rent off the business, then we probably have to do a lot more due diligence to make sure that they have the management skills to actually keep this an ongoing concern, at least enough to be able to pay the rent for the next 20 years until the building's paid for.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if you are taking up a brick and mortar business or any business that has a lease component or some kind of a fixed payment, which might include employees, right? Employee compensation is also a fixed payment. And that is also a liability that a new buyer is taking on, just like a lease. And that's where the consistency in the cash flow, the first point that we talked about, becomes most important.
Right. Well, Bharat, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. Before we let you go, first question is, what is a tool or a habit that you use in your business, your personal life every day that you just couldn't do without?
Um, um, I, uh, I am a big proponent of a big breakfast.
Okay,
And I am one of those guys, who loves a big breakfast, and I have a breakfast smoothie every day, and my children have the same smoothie.
awesome.
And that is something I do as a non-failure or a non-negotiable item in the morning. It doesn't
Right,
matter how good or bad I feel, that's something I have to do.
right. Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because I have become a big breakfast in my adulthood. And as a child, I didn't want anything to eat till later in the day. But now it's like that. As long as I can get a good breakfast in, I am good to go. Starts my day out right. All right. Well, tell everybody, who your client is. I know it's people that are buying or selling businesses, but basically, what does your client look like? What can you do for them? And then I know that you have some resources on YouTube, so please tell us about that as well.
I am here to help business owners, buyers, and sellers to help them understand what their businesses are worth. And as you said, 60% of these business owners are baby boomers. So let me help you with some statistics. 94% of businesses that are incorporated in America have revenue less than $5 million. 94% of the businesses. 60% of those businesses are owned by baby boomers. Baby boomers today are 55 to 75 years old. Average retirement age in America is 68, 69, right? So most baby boomers are either retired or retiring or about to retire, right? Um, and if assume you have a business that's worth $5 million, right? A $5 million average $5 million business might have a EBITDA of say $500,000. An average business that has an EBITDA of $500,000 might sell anywhere from 3 to 5x on EBITDA. So let's take an average of say 4x, right? So 4x times $500,000, that's $2 million, right? $2 million are the cash proceeds you can expect from your business.
Okay.
$2 million minus the cost of transaction minus taxes. So about 45%. $2 million minus 45%, 1.1 million left.
Okay.
Average business owner that owns a business worth $5 million has $200,000 of debt. Could be credit card, could be tuition, could be house, what have you. So say $900,000, right?
Okay.
Now, most of these owners have, average life expectancy in America is what, 80? So if a owner is about 65, 70 years old, they have 15 years more to live, right? An average such owner makes about $75,000 a year, right? So $900,000 divided by 15 years that they have left to go,
Okay.
right? So that is about what, $60,000 a year.
Okay.
Can you live on $5,000 a month? Now, let's assume, make all these assumptions that you have a $5
Right.
million business. You have $500,000 in EBITDA. You are able to consummate a transaction for $2 million. Somebody pays you an all cash deal, and you
Right.
have only 45% exposure in taxes, right? What are the probability of that happening?
Yeah. Yeah. That and the other thing I think you have to think about is for some reason our thinking is that when we retire, we're not going to have the same expenses that we had when we were living life. Whereas most of the time you want to travel, you're not working every day, so you end up going out and spending more money. So you really got to be careful with that to make sure that that's enough for you to live off of.
Yeah. So when I say these statistics to people, people are most surprised.
Right.
So as we had talked about earlier, right? So you have two options. You either run that business into the ground until you are ready to check out, or you
Yeah.
sell that business to somebody else.
Right.
And now, it takes work to prepare the
Right.
business to sell it to somebody else, right? Just like a
Right.
house, right? You got to paint the house, you
Yeah.
got to clean the house, you got to get, vacuum, steam clean. So, and most people are not prepared to do that. And most good people, most good business owners don't even know what they need to do to prep their business for a sale. So for these kind of issues, you need to find experts like me, and not necessarily me. I can't help everybody, but if somebody reaches out to me, I'd be happy to refer them to an expert near them. I have a vast network. My
Okay.
YouTube channel is designed to help business owners like this who are looking for retirement. So if you just go to YouTube and put in "what's it worth" valuation, my channel will pop up, and you can see different businesses that I have appraised and that I'm giving tips on.
Okay. Awesome. And can you tell us that address or tell us the name one more time?
What's it worth?
What's it worth? Okay.
And what's it worth? Bharat, Bharat. If you just put in "what's it worth" and Bharat, my channel will pop up on
Okay.
YouTube.
All right. Well, if you're thinking about buying or selling a business, be sure and go over there and check out the YouTube channel. It's been a pleasure. Learned a lot as usual talking to you, Bharat. So thank you again for taking time out of your day to stop by and talk with us. And that's going to do it for our show today. Again, we are the Business of Business podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Of course, all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So until next time, I'm Roy.